If you've shopped for professionally monitored alarm systems, you've probably seen this comparison: cellular monitoring versus Wi-Fi monitoring. It shows up on sales pages and spec sheets, and after 20 years of installing and servicing these systems, I can tell you the label hides what's actually being compared. Here's the part almost nobody explains. Your alarm panel does not talk to a monitoring center over Wi-Fi, not on any system I've ever installed. When Wi-Fi is involved at all, it covers the last few feet of the journey from the panel to the router sitting in your home. Everything after that happens over the internet, the same internet connection your whole house uses. So the label on the sales page is misleading. What's actually being compared is two paths a signal can take out of your house: a cellular path, using a radio built into the system that connects to cell towers, and an internet path, using the connection you already pay for. Wi-Fi is just one possible link inside that second path. That distinction sounds picky, but it isn't, because once you see the two paths clearly, you can see what each one depends on, what can take each one down, and why the best answer for a lot of homes uses both. That's this video. Quick recap for anyone who hasn't seen my alarm monitoring video. When a sensor trips, your panel builds a coded signal and sends it toward the monitoring center. In many modern systems, that signal doesn't go straight there. It goes first to a cloud platform in the middle, aka a network operations center, and that platform forwards it on. I covered that whole chain in the monitoring video, and I'll link it below. Here's what I didn't cover there, and it matters for today's decision. How much the signal relies on that cloud platform can depend on which path it takes. When the signal travels the cellular path, it almost always goes through that cloud platform in the middle. That's simply how cellular alarm transmission is typically built. The internet path can carry alarm signals with little to no reliance on the platform in the middle. Some systems and central stations support sending alarm signals over the internet directly to receiving equipment at the central station itself. I've worked with setups like that, and I'll be honest with you, those were the fastest alarm communications I ever saw in 20 years. Not every central station supports that today, but I'd expect it to be where things head. One thing to keep straight though, even when alarm signals go direct, the cloud platform usually still has a job. If your system has a mobile app, and most modern systems do, that app talks to your panel through the platform, and the platform needs alarm status updates to keep the app accurate. So a direct path to the central station and a platform in the middle aren't either or. Plenty of systems use both at the same time for different jobs. One more piece of housekeeping before we compare the paths. If you watched my wired versus wireless sensor video, keep those two decisions separate in your head. Wireless sensors use a short-range radio to talk to your panel inside the house. The communication path is how your panel talks to the outside world. You can have wireless sensors with cellular monitoring, wired sensors with internet monitoring, any combination. Two different decisions, two different videos. Let's take each path on its own terms, starting with the internet path. The case for it is strong. It's fast, and in the direct setups I just described, remarkably fast. It uses a connection your home already has, so there's no separate radio service to think about, and bandwidth is never a concern because alarm signals are tiny. Now the honest part. The internet path only works when every link in a chain is working. Your panel has to reach your router and modem have to be powered on and functioning, your internet provider has to be up, and your home has to have power, because here's the detail that surprises people. Your alarm panel has a backup battery, but that battery does not power your router. The power goes out, your panel is alive and awake, and its internet path is already gone. Another failure I've seen more times than I can count. The homeowner replaces their router, the Wi-Fi network name or password changes, and the alarm panel never reconnects. Nothing looks wrong, the keypad works, the sensors work, everything feels normal, but the system lost its path out hours, days, maybe weeks ago. If your panel connects to the router over Wi-Fi instead of a network cable, you've added one more link that can quietly break, and this is the way it usually breaks. There's a physical side to this chain too. Your modem, your router, and the line coming into your house are all reachable. A cable can be cut outside. Equipment can be unplugged inside, and I've seen that happen by accident as often as anything else. Someone tidies up the cabinet, A plug comes loose, and the alarm's path out of the house quietly disappears. Now the cellular path, same honest treatment. Its biggest strength is independence. A cellular communicator lives inside the system and runs on the panel's power, which means it runs on the panel's backup battery too. Your power can go out, your internet can go out, your router can be unplugged, and the cellular path is still standing. It's also much harder to interrupt from outside the home than a line someone can reach. That independence is why cellular became a professional standard for so many monitored systems. But the cellular path has its own dependencies, and they're worth knowing. First, signal strength. The communicator needs adequate cellular coverage at the spot where your panel's radio lives, and panels have a habit of living in basements, closets, and utility rooms. A house with great coverage in the kitchen can still have a weak signal where it counts. Second, you're depending on the carrier's network. Outages are rare, but the network belongs to someone else. Third, and this is the one nobody mentions at the sale, cellular networks retire. Carriers have shut down older network generations over the years, and every time that happens, alarm communicators built for those networks go dark if they're not proactively replaced on time. The system on your wall might be fine for another decade, but its cellular radio lives on the carrier's schedule, not yours. It's the same lesson from my wired versus wireless video playing out again. Parts of your system are a durable layer, and other parts are a replaceable layer. A cellular communicator is a replaceable layer. So where does that leave the comparison? Here's where 20 years of service calls lands me. Look at the failure list side by side. A power outage, an unplugged router, a cut line, a changed Wi-Fi password. All of those take down the internet path and leave the cellular path standing. Weak signal at the panel and a retired network generation weaken the cellular path and leave the internet path untouched. And yes, both paths ultimately depend on somebody else's network, your internet provider on one side and the cellular carrier on the other. But those are two different networks run by different companies on different infrastructure, and the odds of both having a bad day at the same moment are very small. The two paths fail for different reasons at different times. That's the whole argument for dual path monitoring, where the system carries both and uses one as primary with the other as backup. One path can be having its worst day, while the other carries the signal like nothing happened. Many modern systems support this, and when both paths are realistically available for your home, it's usually the strongest answer. The question stops being which path wins and becomes which path leads. There's one more piece, and it's short, but almost nobody thinks about it until it matters. A communication path failing is only half the story. The other half is how long it takes anyone to notice. Monitored systems handle this through supervision, which is a fancy word for a simple idea. The system and the monitoring side check in with each other on a schedule, and a missed check-in raises a flag. Here's the catch: that schedule varies, depending on the system, the plan, and the configuration. A dead path might be flagged within minutes, or it might take considerably longer. Two homes can have the same equipment and very different answers to the question, how long could my system sit disconnected before anyone knew? And if your system carries both paths, there's a follow-up question worth asking. When the primary path goes down, does the system switch to the backup path automatically? And how long does that switchover take? A backup path only earns its keep if the handoff actually happens and happens fast. So when you're comparing monitoring options, add these to your list. If my system loses its connection, how fast does anyone find out? And if it has a second path, how quickly does it take over? The answers tell you a lot about what you're actually paying for. Let's land this the way I like to land these decisions, by situation rather than by spec sheet. If your home has reliable internet and decent cellular coverage at the panel, dual path should be your default ask. Let the provider tell you which path leads on their system, but insist on both. You're buying redundancy, and redundancy is the point. If cellular coverage is weak where your panel lives, in a rural pocket or dead spot, the internet path may have to carry the load. If that's your situation, treat the dependency chain seriously. A network cable to the panel beats Wi-Fi. If your home has no internet service, or service you wouldn't trust with a phone call, cellular carries everything, and your provider should verify signal strength at the radio location, often inside the main control panel, before anything gets installed, not after. And think about backup power, but think about it honestly. The panel's path out of your house may run through more boxes than you realize. A modem, a router, maybe a network switch, maybe a separate Wi-Fi access point. Backup power on the router alone doesn't help if the modem next to it goes dark. If the internet path is carrying your security, know which boxes that path runs through, because every one of them has to stay alive to report an alarm. And whichever way your home points, ask the supervision questions I just mentioned. A path is only as good as how quickly someone notices it's gone, and a backup is only as good as the handoff. Here's the thought I want to leave you with. The sales page asks you to pick a winner between two paths. The better question is how many ways your house can call for help, and what has to go wrong before it can't. One path is a single point of failure. Two paths, failing for different reasons, is a system. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.